Good afternoon, my name is Tom. Welcome to the Rustic Log Cabin in Northern Maine. Get yourself a cup of coffee. Today, I want to talk about the future plans of this cabin. As you can see, there's a new cabin being built behind me. You are at the Beaver Creek Deer Camp. I probably should be calling it Bear Camp, but all of you like Deer Camp a whole lot better. So it's more of a YouTube thing than that. But there's bear sign everywhere, and this place will be set up for bear. So, anyways, what are we talking about today? We're talking about the woodshed today. And if you're building a cabin, the woodshed's important. A lot of people like to store their firewood underneath the cabin. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not a wood box. That's probably the worst thing that you can do under a cabin is use it for storage. But I'm going to go into that in a separate video. Because it's a video all by itself, because it's that important. But anyways, I've been here since early spring. You know, we bought the place right after actually there was still snow on the ground when we bought the place. So we bought the place early spring, and we closed on it and all of that. And I figured out where I want my cabin. You can see that started behind us. I say us, it's because me and you at camera. But anyways, I figured out where I wanted the cabin, and then I'd just been scratching my head on where I was going to build a woodshed. I don't want a big woodshed because I don't need a big woodshed. I figure something that'll hold a cord of wood is more than enough for in here, because when I'm in here, I'll either have the six-wheeler or I'll have a snowmobile. And if not, I'll have a sled, and I can haul firewood. And there's a lot of dead trees down and dead trees standing, so I've got plenty of firewood to work with here. So location, location, location on the woodshed. I was leaning towards over there, off to my right. It's a great spot. It's level. It's on my trail coming in. If you watched any of my trail pictures, you've seen it several times. It would make a good spot for the woodshed because of location, location, location. I drive right by it, so it would be easy to unload my firewood and put in there. But my problem with it is, as I've been building this building and watching last spring, I've been following the sun. And the sun comes up over here and it works its way across the sky from left to right. So what I like on my woodsheds is to have as much sun directly into the woodshed as possible. You know, and over there, it wouldn't get any sun at all because the sun sets over there. So, and if I had the door this way, then the back of the woodshed would get sun and the interior would get nothing. And I don't like that for a lot of reasons. And I'm going to start with a couple. One of the reasons is that when you have a fluffy snowstorm in the wintertime, the snow blows into absolutely everything. So your woodshed is no different. Your woodshed would have 2 inches of snow on the interior, if not more. Could have more than that. So if it's facing the sun, the woodshed will still get snow blowed into it on these snowy, dry days. But if it has access to the sun will warm that up. If you've noticed in a lot of my videos, I love to sit in the woodshed and have coffee. It's one of my favorite things to do. because usually the view from my woodshed is southerly exposure, gorgeous. Up at the cabin there, I can overlook my whole yard, so I really like that. At home, it's the same deal. My woodshed is southerly exposure, so I have a little sitting bench there, and I just like sitting there. So where are we going to put it here? Well, as I've watched the sun, now I'm leaning towards this way. See, I don't want the woodshed here to block anything. I've set this cabin up so I can deer hunt and bear hunt right from the front door if I want to. Because I can see, once all these leaves are off in the fall, I can see more than 100 yards in several directions. So I want to be careful where I place that woodshed so that it doesn't block any access that I would have to seeing a deer or even taking a deer right from the cabin. That's the whole point in this place and the whole point in how I placed it here. So that the cabin itself is a tree stand, not just a building where you hang your hat. But I'm thinking right now about 50 feet to the south of that cabin over there is where the woodshed will go. I will make sure that you see that spot. It's not a good spot. I don't. Everything here seems to have a stump in it. But anyways, I ought to be able. The woodshed probably going to be something like 8 by 10. And I'm going to build the woodshed out of slab wood. At the sawmill, there's always a slab wood that's left over that's not good for lumber. And I found a guy that sells slab wood not too far from where I live, so I think I will side the woodshed with slab wood. And I normally don't put walls on a woodshed, but where this one's going to be so small, keeping snow out of it is going to be an issue. So I'm gonna want some walls on this one, as well as that way the solar from the sun can get in there and warm it up that much more and keep my wood pile nice and dry. So that's the idea behind the woodshed, anyways. So, but anyway, it must be time for coffee. What I want to talk about today is the crawl space under your cabin. If you don't have a crawl space, you should have a crawl space. Let's put it to you that way. A crawl space under the cabin should be wide open, airflow, the whole 9 yards. This is going to be a very short video. I'm going to throw a couple of tips on this just because I think it's important. A lot of these cabins have mice and stuff like that, and squirrel problems and all of that. A lot of people think the crawl space under a cabin, and I can say this from working on cabins for 35 to 40 years. Sometimes I'd have to spend hours moving stuff out from under a cabin before I could ever think about jacking it or leveling it or changing posts and pads, because they stored so much stuff under there. For whatever reason, people think it's a great place for lumber or anything else going. It's not. Look at it this way. If you're going to put something under your cabin, you might as well go throw it on the dump, especially if it's lumber, because it's moist down there. It creates a moisture trap, the whole 9 yards. If you're putting stuff under there, you might as well go throw it on the dump, because within a few years it's not going to be any good at all. But here's the worst part about putting stuff under the cabin. Number one is it creates moisture traps. Sucks in the moisture, doesn't allow airflow. All of that plays into rotting out the timbers under your cabin. But here's the other thing that it does. It gives mice some place to live. Same thing with squirrels and chipmunks and other rodent animals that bother cabins. It's just an automatic place to live because you've got a pile of lumber there, or you've got kids' toys down there, or whatever you're storing under the cabin. Firewood, It's not meant to go under firewood. Firewood and all that's not meant to go under the cabin. Same thing with ants and everything else. All that, you put a firewood pile under there, and if there's a log in there that's got ants in it, now your cabin has got ants, if it didn't have before. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're storing stuff under the cabin. And here's the other tip for this stuff while we're on it, is cinder blocks. You see a lot of cabins sitting on cinder blocks. Do not, and I can't say this one strong enough and hard enough, do not use cinder blocks for underpinning under a cabin. I don't care how many cabins you've seen do it. I don't care how many times you've seen it on YouTube or whatever. Don't do it. When you use number one, a cinder block never holds. 8-inch by 16-inch cinder block will sink right out of sight. And if it's not doing that, those hollow areas that make up a cinder block, it's a mouse hole. Mice go in there and build their nest. I have not probably flipped over a cinder block from under a cabin that didn't have a mouse nest in it. Almost, I can't remember any. I don't care if you lay it down sideways or if you stand it up this way. The mice will move right in there. Think about it. It's a perfect home for a mouse, especially if they go up and down. They're safe in there. Nothing's going to get them. Once they're surrounded in concrete. You couldn't ask for better walls. So they move in their nest. They're protected from the draft. They're protected from birds, anything. So don't use a cinder block for underpinning under a cabin. Can't say that enough. It is a terrible, terrible idea. So that's going to wrap up this video. I wanted this one to be short and sweet and to the point. And I will see you in the next one.